Greetings everyone, once again this is Theo. We have arrived to day 4 of our fast. So we made it through Monday, we made it through Tuesday, we made it through Wednesday, and now we're on to Thursday. So hopefully all has been going well, that the Lord has been speaking to us through fasting, through our prayer, through these messages, and that we're being blessed on this journey. So I just want to get right into today's message, which is found in the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verses 1 through 17. The book of Daniel, chapter 1, verses 1 through 17. And it's out of this particular passage that we now know about what is known as the Daniel fast. All right. And for today's title, it's going to be Living That Fast Life. Once again, living that fast life. All right, and you're going to see why. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoram, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Joachim, king of Judah, into his hands. So, right off the bat, we have this outside king Nebuchadnezzar coming into God's kingdom and overtaking it. And it says that God himself gave over his people to this king. So normally we read about how God protects his people, how when his people are attacked, that God lifts up a standard. But now we're reading that God actually gave his people over to the king of Babylon. And the reason why this happened is if we were to read previous passages, God's people were forgetting who they were supposed to worship. They were dabbling in other things they shouldn't be dabbling in, starting to get involved in idol worship, starting to forget who their true God was, starting to do things that were not glorifying to God. And because of this disobedience, he allowed them to be overtaken by the king of Babylon. And it says not only did they overtake him, but it says that when they were given over into his hand, that they also took some articles from the house of God, capital G, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, lowercase g. And he brought the articles into the treasure room of his God. So the King Nebuchadnezzar not only overtook God's people, but he also went into God's house and took articles, different artifacts, and took those things from God's house and he placed them into the house of the God that he was worshiping. So think about how often the enemy does that, and sometimes we allow the enemy to do that, and sometimes we do it ourselves, but we take those things that are sacred, those things that were set apart and consecrated for God's service, to the worship of God, and we allow those things to be taken out of God's place and put into a place that is unsacred, to put into a place that is profane, to put into a place that is worldly. So think about in our own lives the things that God has given us, the things that we're supposed to use to glorify him. Now, instead of using those things to glorify him, those things are being used to glorify another God. Lord have mercy. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, so this is King Nebuchadnezzar, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had the ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. So King Nebuchadnezzar says, I want you to go among those who are now being held captive, and I want you to pick out the best among them, the best looking men, the ones with no blemish, the smartest, the most gifted, and I want you to bring them to me so we can then teach them the things of our land. We can teach them the things of my kingdom. So these are the children of God who we can assume had already been learned in the things of God. They've been taught the ways of God. They've taught how to serve God. They taught all of God's statutes. So they've already been educated in the things of God. But now they're being selected to be educated in the things of someone else's kingdom, of someone else's God. So think about how often that happens, that the enemy is so selective to make sure he's targeting the best among us. Those who have the most potential. Those who have maybe a little bit greater influence. Those who may be gifted in certain areas. Because the enemy knows, strategically speaking, if he is able to remove those individuals from God's care, from God's kingdom, if he's able to remove those individuals from a position where they're serving God, and then he's able to place them within his own service, within his own kingdom, all of a sudden now the domino and ripple effect is going to be greater than if he was just choosing any old person. So it says, hey, go out and find the best, the greatest, the most gifted, the smartest, and then we're going to relearn them in the ways of me, King Nebuchadnezzar, in the ways of our gods, in the ways of our people, that which means they're going to have to unlearn the ways of their God. And it says in verse 5, and the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so at the end of the time they might serve before the king. So let's check this out in modern day terminology. You're taking some of the best and brightest, and then you're saying, hey, come to the kingdom, while all the rest of the people are going to be in captivity. You're going to remain in captivity, but we're going to give you some benefits. You're going to be to come to the king's palace. We're going to allow you to learn our ways of free education, full ride scholarship, and we're going to give you the delicacies. So now you're not eating scraps or crumbs. You're going to be eating the best of the best of the best. And you're going to be able to drink the wine that the king himself drinks. So you're going to be drinking the best of the best. And you're going to get these 3 years of training in such a way that's going to make you equipped to be able to serve our king. Talking about living the fast life. This would be someone's dream. Imagine you were in your own safety of your kingdom, or in your home, or in your land, or in your city, doing your thing. But then that particular home, city, or land gets overtaken, and now you're put into captivity. And you're just starting to say, woe is me. We've been taken captive. And all of a sudden, the very people who took you captive says, but we have a deal for some select few of you. You're going to be able to get all of this. You're going to be able to get the finest schooling, the best clothes, the best food, the best drink, the best training. Sounds like you would be living that fast life. The best of all the things. The best that all the world has to offer. Think about that. How often has the enemy came to us while we were where we were supposed to be at, doing what we were supposed to be doing? But because we started to slack off, and because we were being disobedient, and maybe starting not to feel this whole Christian thing, growing weary of doing well, and starting to almost long for yesterday when we could just go out in the world and do our own thing. And then we get taken into captivity. And this seems like it's the lowest point in our lives. But then the enemy so smoothly and so subtly says, but guess what? If you so choose to do what we say, all this can be yours. The best of the best of the best. But then we fail to realize that God had already given us all that best, and when God gave it to us, we neglected it. Yet all of a sudden now, this deal that the enemy is making with us seems so promising. And it would have been very understandable if Daniel and his friends had accepted this deal. But what we're going to read is that Daniel stood fast and made up his mind that he was only going to serve the Lord. It says in verse 6, "Now from among them they chose the sons of Judah. They were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them the chief of the eunuch gave them names. He gave Daniel the name Belshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego." So we recognize those names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those were not their birth names. Those were the names that the king Nebuchadnezzar gave them. If you don't know anything about your name, our names not only identify who we are, but biblically speaking, they also identified our purpose, what we were supposed to do. For example, my birth name is Theodore, which in the Greek means gift from God. Now, growing up in high school, I used to wild out. I was doing whatever you can think about doing. Sex, drugs, and rap. Not rock and roll, but sex, drugs, and rap. I was doing it all. But as I got older and I gave my life to Christ and I really began to reflect upon that name, gift from God, and I said to myself that if my name is gift from God, it's not just who I am, but what I'm all supposed to do. All of a sudden now I have to carry myself a different way. I have to carry myself as if I am truly a gift from God. And people call me Theo, lowercase g God. Once again, puts a lot of emphasis on how I should be carrying myself. My wife's name is Nicole, which means victory for the people or victorious. Once she knew that, she has to act a certain way. She can't live a defeated life because her name means victory. All right. So God had gave revelation to the parents of these young men of what their names should be. Yet one of the first things the enemy likes to do is when we start to serve the enemy, when we try to serve this world, when we try to serve the flesh, they always want to try to rename us, because renaming us doesn't just give us a new identity, but it gives us a new purpose. So think about when people call you out of your name. They call you stupid. They call you trick. They call you hoe, whatever it may be. If you allow people to call you out of your name, you're literally allowing them to call you out of your purpose. All right? And so they changed their names. But Daniel, it says in verse 8, purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. We have to purpose within our hearts that we're not going to defile ourselves. And he says he's not going to defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. And so he's like, you know what, King, I appreciate the best of the best of the best food and drink, but I'm not going to defile myself with that. I'm not going to be party to that. I'm not going to participate in those things. So Daniel, and it says, so Daniel requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So he made his request known to the chief eunuchs. Hey, no offense, but I don't want to eat the same thing that these other guys are eating. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. So just because Daniel right away purposed in his heart that he wasn't going to do a certain thing, all of a sudden you would think that he would get in trouble for refusing. That people would be offended by his refusal. Hey, the king is trying to do something great for you and you're just refusing that. You're ungrateful. But because Daniel was steadfast and purpose in his heart, God gave him favor with the chief eunuch. And the chief of the eunuch said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. So what he's saying is, hey y'all, I feel you. If you didn't want to eat the food, hey, I can respect that. But my king gave me a job, and my job was to make sure y'all got this food. That way y'all are being energized, you're being strengthened, you're growing in stature, you're looking good. I don't want you to deny yourselves this food in such a way that you begin to start losing weight, your face is shrinking up, you're not energized, and all of a sudden you look so frail compared to these other guys, because then the king is going to get mad at me and I'm going to be up in trouble. So one thing that this eunuch was saying to Daniel was, hey, I respect your fast, but if you choose to do so, you're going to miss out. You're only going to be hurting yourself, because the bottom line is, if you don't take part in these delicacies, you're going to lose weight. You're not going to be looking good anymore. You're not going to be strong. You're not going to have all the energy. You're going to be the one losing out. Isn't it just like the enemy? When we try to be disciplined, when we make our minds up that we're going to serve the Lord, when we purpose in our heart that we're going to do what God tells us to do, one of the tactics of the enemy is to try to convince us that if we stay on that path, we're going to miss out. Hey, if you're just faithful to your spouse, you're going to miss out on all these other honeys and all these other dudes. If all you do is stay the word of God, or if all you do is show up to where you're supposed to be and do what you're supposed to do, well, how much fun is that? How much fun is that to be a faithful employee, a faithful husband and wife, a faithful friend? How much fun is it to go to church on Sundays and pay tithes and things of that nature, and fast and pray and just be a person of higher integrity? They're going to say, if you do those things, you're going to be the ones hurt by that. You're going to miss out, because compared to all the other people who aren't doing those things, you're going to seem as though you're less than. You're going to seem as though you're weaker than. You're going to be the one that stands out for all the wrong reasons. Thank God Daniel didn't fall for that. He says in verse 11, Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He said to them, please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. So he's saying, for the next 10 days, while everyone else is eating the top meats, whatever those meats were back then, all we're going to do is just eat these vegetables and drink this water. That's why it's called a Daniel fast. So he didn't fast completely of food, but he did deny himself that which he had access to. Sometimes it's not simply about saying, I'm going to no longer take part in a particular thing. Sometimes what's most important is that you resist taking part in a specific thing. And that's that thing that the enemy tries to bring your way. So maybe for you, a certain food is not a temptation. It's not even your favorite food. It's no biggie. So you denying yourself of eating of that food isn't no big deal. Yet, if you were someone in Daniel and his friend's position, where they're in captivity getting crumbs and things, leftovers, all of a sudden now you've been presented with this opportunity to have the best of the best all-you-can-eat buffet. To deny yourself of that opportunity, that's meaningful. All right. So sometimes it's not about just giving up everything. Sometimes it's about giving up that one thing, giving up that thing that you normally wouldn't have access to. But the enemy says you can have access to it if you do what I say. And you say, no, I'm cool. I'll deny myself of those particular things. So test us for 10 days. And it says, then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies, and you see fit. So deal with your servants, so you can consent with them in this matter, and tested them for 10 days. So he's saying, if your concern is that we're going to lose all this weight, we're going to be lacking energy, we're going to fall apart when compared to our counterparts who partake of these things, test us on that for 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, compare us to them, and then you see for yourselves who is the ones lacking. Wouldn't that be great when the enemy tempts us with something that we say, no, 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 no. Or, and sometimes the enemy uses people to say, hey, why don't you come out here and do this with me? Hey, let's go out and hang out. Let's go to the club. Let's partake in this thing that we shouldn't partake in of. And if you don't partake in it, you're going to be lame. You're going to be whack. You're going to be missing out. And you say, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to do my thing. You go over there and do your thing. And when it's all said and done, we'll compare the results and see what happens. All right? At the end of the 10 days, their features, so this is Daniel and his boys, their features appeared better and fatter in the flesh than all the young men who had ate the portion of the king's delicacy. So imagine that they're eating everything, the breads, the meats, the veggies, the drink, all that stuff. And yet when it was all said and done, Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were buffered. They were fatter. They had more energy. How often have we trusted God? Whether it's in fasting, whether it's in our financial giving, and when we do so, it seems as though we have more than what we had when we started. There's times when Nicole and I have been faithful in our giving, and it seemed like we had more when we were giving more. And when we were making more but giving less, we had less. Same thing with this fasting. Sometimes we say, well, I can't work out, or I can't do this. I'm going to lose too much weight. I'm going to be too tired because I'm fasting. You'd be surprised how God is able to multiply our energy because we're being faithful. And he did the same thing for Daniel. So he's going to do that for us. We're going to be at our jobs, fatigued, tempted to break the fast, when we're out and about doing certain things because we put our trust in food and not God. But if we're able to persevere and trust God, the results are going to be better than if we were eating to begin with. And so we're going to be more energized, more fit, stronger during this fast than we're going to be if we were eating. That's great. I'm almost finished. And it says, thus the steward took away the portion of delicacies and the wine, and they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. So he said, you know what? From now on, everyone's doing this veggies. Everyone's going to be doing what they're doing. Because what Daniel and them are doing seems to be working. That's what we're going to do also. So imagine that how people who are watching us, all right, this is important. So there's people who are watching us. And they're expecting us to fail. They're expecting us to get the short end of the stick when we do the things that God has called us to do. But when they see those positive results, that increases the chance that they're going to want to do those things also. So sometimes it's our consistency and our persistence, our ability to endure, that is going to be a testimony not only of what God can do for us, but what he can also do for others. And so during this fast and throughout this year, there's going to be times where we're going to be tempted to give up. Where we're going to be tempted to go the way of the world, to do what everyone else is doing. But if we're able to persevere and endure, the world is going to take note and they're going to want more of what we have. All right? And finally it says, as for the 4 young men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Why is that significant? Because back in verse 3 and 4, one of the things that the king had promised these young men of Israel was, when you come here, we're going to be able to teach you of all the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And you're going to get training in the things of this new kingdom. Well, they said, we're cool on that. We're going to trust God. And God rewarded them by giving them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. So all said now, not only did they not get what the king was promising, which was skill and knowledge and wisdom in a particular area, God gave them wisdom, knowledge in all literature, in all wisdom. And Daniel understanding in all visions and dreams. So off the bat, that deal that the enemy makes us sounds very appealing. I'll give you this, I'll give you this, and all you got to do is deny yourself these things over here. But when we're faithful to God, God's going to be faithful to us. And not only will he give us the things the king promised, he's going to give us the thing that he promised, which is going to outweigh any other promise that anyone else can make us. So instead of getting blown up in one area, instead of having maturation in one area, instead of having favor in one area and becoming the best in one area and skilled in one area, God blessed them with all things. And he wants to do the same thing for us. The world is going to promise us a sliver of a pie, where God is promising us unlimited pies, unlimited favor, unlimited grace, unlimited access. So let us make sure that we're persevering during this time, that we be like Daniel and his friends, and that when the enemy comes, that we're able to resist and that we remember who we serve. And when we do that, God is going to reward us mightily. All right. Thank you once again. God bless.